So thank you so much for the organizing committee to invite me to give you my practitioner's view on applying SSbD in practice, because that's really what I'm going to do today. So I'm going to start with the problem framing. I think even though we had a great session this morning, it's always good to remind ourselves why we're doing this. I had some slides of defining SSbD, but I don't think that will be necessary, so it'll give me more time on my other slides. But I will do is I have 8 lessons learned that I have gathered through years of experience in many projects, mainly in the OECD, where I co-chair along with BIAC and Canada in the WPMN, which is the Working Party of Manufactured Nanomaterials in the Safe and Sustainable Innovation Approach Steering Group, in IRIS, which is a new project, Emma, which has funded my trip here, so I really cannot represent IRIS. The goal of IRIS really is to develop an EU-led international SSbD network, and also to develop SSbD roadmaps and solutions so that we can bring it closer to practice. In Sunshine, where we're looking at SSbD for multi-component nanomaterials. In Surpass, we're working for SSbD or SSRBD because it's safe, sustainable, and also recyclable by design plastics. And obviously PARC, which is a new partnership that we're looking at next generation tools. So as a whole, I will just share with you what I've learned in trying to bring this concept to practice. So it will go beyond the data, but more on the process and organizational infrastructure and this ecosystem discussion and collaboration and co-creation that we discussed this morning. So why are we talking about this? So I think we really we need to acknowledge that we are outside the safe operating space of a planetary boundaries, and particularly with novel entities. We cannot ignore this. So we need to make sure, we need to take action. And this has huge impact not only on the environment, but also on health. So this urgency to make sure that we resolve and recover and be able to, save our planet, as sort of speak, if it's extreme, it's important. So this urgent action is really needed. I want to really stop and reflect, because as you listen to my presentation, a lot of things seem common sense, but they're not. I love this quote by Albert Einstein. It makes you think we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used to create them. So we need to think differently, and we need to have a different mindset to be able to solve the problems. We are dealing in an era that we have to integrate not only nano, but also chemicals, safety, sustainability, and sustainability in itself has environmental, social, economic aspects. So how do we integrate this? We can't be doing that in silos. We have to co-create solutions. We heard this morning about really thinking about problems. What are the problems? Not focus on technology, but problems. So keep that in mind in my presentation. So the chemical strategy for sustainability, the safe and sustainable by design, is a key aspect. What I want to bring in attention is that there is also in the Zero Pollution Action Plan that there is a reverse triangle. We are no longer aiming at eliminating or remediating. We are no longer wanting to minimize and control. We are looking to prevent. Really, any innovation, we want every material, chemical, process, product, we want all to be preventive. That is the ambition, and that's why we are thinking about this concept came along. So this change of mindset. I'm not going to go through this because I think Iransu went through it, so it's not necessary. But again, a change of mindset. Not going to go through this. Also, I do want to have an outreach. Please read the report on the JRC framework. Provide your comments on the 4 areas that were mentioned by Iransu. If you have SSbD promoting activities, if you have case studies on SSbD, and also feedback on the framework itself and on the reporting template, please, let's do this together. There's the link that you can provide the feedback. The deadline for this year's testing phase is 30th of June, so please do so. I will not go through the framework because it was explained so clearly. There are 2 phases. There is the redesign phase and also the safe and sustainability assessment. My presentation will focus on the redesign. So what are the lessons learned? So let me start with by design. So one thing I want to clarify is that doing a safety assessment and doing a sustainability assessment is not safe and sustainable by design. There's 2 steps needed. You need to first be able to assess what are the problems in safety, what red flags you have in sustainability, and there's a second step. You need to take actions to optimize both. At least that's what we see in practice. There's a figure from the OECD. We are really looking at the whole life cycle, from the materials all the way to end of life, but also the innovation process. I mean, this is the Cooper stage gate model, but really whatever process you use for innovating that covers the idea, the prototype, the upscaling, the pre-market, including the innovation phase. So what we often see is that this first phase, whether it's chemical material or product or article, if you reach an article of a product, if you are, depending on your sector, that we see that function, it's very functionality driven. And what we want, and then once you have a prototype, then you start thinking, oh, we need to look at safety or sustainability, because now sustainability, but depending on the sector, some focus more on sustainability than safety. But it's in the later phase in the prototype. Where do we want to go? What we want to do is we wanted to integrate functionality with safety and sustainability. You want this to be iterative. It's not something that you do once. You do it all along the innovation process, and you keep in mind the entire life cycle. So this is really important, to integrate safety and sustainability in the design of your material, of your product, of your process. You take into account use and end of life. That is the ideal. The second lesson is the big picture. And today we have the batteries as a theme. And what does that mean? I think we discussed this morning about problems. So it's moving towards purpose-driven innovation. So what does that mean? So let's say we have a battery, and we had this case, because that's how this work got started. We had a question about if you use an advanced material in a cathode, does that make the battery sustainable? So we were reading papers, and we're starting to ask questions. So, okay, what does the life cycle look like? So this life cycle thinking. Okay, so you have a cathode, but you need to know that a battery has other components. So do we want to make an impact on the cathode? That's more functionality thinking. Or do you want to make an impact on the battery? So what do we need to do? So I think what we need to do when I mean big picture is to identify all the safety and sustainability issues in that product, article, and application. And that's what we did with batteries. With batteries, we have problems with criticality, because there's a lot of critical materials being used. We have problems with toxicity. There's a lot of CMRs and some EDs and some persistent substances, depending on the type of battery that you have. Environmental impacts, as you can see, you can have quite high environmental impact. You also have social impacts, child labor, particularly in Congo, but also in the mining of lithium in Chile and Bolivia. Circularity, energy is a very energy consuming to be able to recycle. And functionality and cost. Cost is important because we need to have a balanced view, a big picture view. So what can happen if you don't have this big picture? Let's say we focus only on critical materials, and you choose a battery and you have, great, no critical materials. Amazing. What does that mean if you list that? By not looking at the safety and the environmental impact, you might overlook other impacts. So what we did in this article was we took data from coal. They just provided the impact and the cost. And I did all the assessments in the social and but gathering this big picture allows you to identify the problems in your application and allows you to gear innovation with optimal impact. So you're asking, how can I innovate with minimized critical materials, making sure they're not toxic, reducing the environmental impact, and make sure that somehow the recyclability or we create circular loops somehow. So this is what I want you to take to ask those questions, big picture. The third, people. We talked today about co-creation, well, actually no, collaboration. I talk about co-creation, but people is really important. When we started the Project Sunshine, we had luckily learned a lot in a project from Nanorec 2, where we had this interdisciplinary group of experts. And that was brilliant, the way the interaction between the disciplines. And this is not a unique observation. This is something the EEA also mentioned, really putting in the innovation a material scientist, human toxicologist, environmental toxicologist, sustainability expert, recyclability expert, put them together. And then if they work together along the innovation phase is really important. You start making strategies to optimize the different aspects. The fourth, be practical, common sense. Sustainability is really difficult. It's almost impossible early in the innovation to do a full LCA. So you have to be a bit more pragmatic. You have to start asking questions. Okay, I have an innovation. What do I know about critical materials? What do I know about energy, water, solvent around the entire life cycle? What do I know? What is the waste infrastructure? And that's what we did in Sunshine. And with this approach, we really managed to reduce hazardous substances, but also have an impact on criticality, water, and waste. So by this group of experts asking questions and co-creating solutions. Fifth, still people, but more value chain perspective. So I said I'm here with Iris, and here we are trying to build an EU-led SSbD international network. And one of the key aspects that we really are trying to do is to create an efficient science policy industry interface, connecting the knowledge that the science becomes impactful, that the policy is supported, and also that we have this value chain perspective. We are very lucky to have 7 value chains. We have packaging, textiles, construction, automotive, energy, electronics, and fragrances. And what we're doing is we're first mapping what are the key players, stakeholders along the entire sub-value chains. We cannot do the whole value chain, but we're selecting sub-value chains to be a bit more pragmatic. We identify this big picture. What are the main safety and sustainability issues in each of these value chains? Problems, start from the problem and gear the innovation to optimize impact. And finally, we are supporting the Commission to provide feedback on the recommendation. The 6th, PARC. PARC is a European partnership, but they're really working in next generation risk assessment. And this is important because the goal of PARC, at least in the work package 8, will be to develop a toolbox. And this toolbox will be able to support companies to apply SSbD. So we're hoping to have a first prototype at the end of this year. So we need your support. If you have projects with tools, please get in contact with PARC and see if we can build together a unified toolbox for SSbD. 7th, we go beyond the technical. So in the OECD, we don't talk about SSbD because we talk about SIA, Safe and Sustainable Innovation Approach. And what is SIA? SIA is the combination of SSbD with regulatory preparedness and is facilitated by a trusted environment that a regulator has a role and an innovator has a role. So SIA really addresses this early dialogue with innovators and regulators, and ideally in an early phase of the innovation process. And what we want to do is we want to transform towards SSbD materials, products, and processes together. So I'll give you an example of why this is so important. So from a regulatory perspective, we have an advanced materials steering group. And here we've developed an early for ADMA, which is really a set of questions of safety and sustainability and allows to identify information needs. And what we have is this sort of group of experts of different disciplines trying to address whether there be hotspots for safety and sustainability, and also looking at regulatory considerations. So please take a look at the brochure, because this was developed with the RIVM, along with BFR, BAWA, and UBA. So it's really, from a regulatory perspective, we are discussing potential issues that need possible regulatory action. But from the innovator perspective, It's a set of questions that can guide you on what kind of safety and sustainability information you need. And there will be a webinar on the 4th of October if you follow the OECD website. And my last, from an innovator point of view, we need different corporate governance. That's really important. We need SSbD supportive models, and we need leadership. I think if you want to be future-proof, you really need to think regeneration. You need to think about rethink, restore, replenish. It's not sufficient if you want to survive to be net zero. You want to be net positive. You want to be ecosystem. You want to thrive and be planet-centric. This is so important, I think, to regenerate, to give back to the planet. So hopefully today, these are my concluding remarks. What do you need for SSbD? Design thinking by design, safety and sustainability integrated into innovation. You can do that by building ecosystems, by thinking about the big picture, by having transdisciplinary experts, but also bringing the whole value chain. Also, you need tools. Park will give us that toolbox, and really thinking of SIA, that we really push for a trusted environment where we can have this dialogue and together move in this journey. And finally, from a corporate, having these SSbD supportive business models. Please join IRIS if you haven't done so. Help us in this journey together to create these ecosystems and see how we can, make progress one step at a time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you almost actually answered the question which we got here. Today, more and more stakeholders talk about regenerative rather than sustainable. What is your view on that?
Yeah.
So you can maybe add a few comments on
yeah, we do see, what we do see about regenerative is that you want to bring back what you want to create ecosystems. And what you see is this new line of leadership where companies are becoming ecosystems themselves to give back. And it's really increasing in use. But I think if you don't have the top down and that bottom up really in the regenerative, I don't think we can move forward, because we've caused so much damage already that I think we need to, recover what we've lost. So I think and I'm glad that we see this type of leadership coming back. It's just I don't see a lot of examples of practical use yet, and I'm hoping that this sort of research becomes more practical and that companies start applying this.
I think one of the visions or one of the hopes we also have behind the SSbD framework is that we start bringing in all these other discussions which like enable us to think a little bit innovative. How do we want things to be done in the future? What are the right questions we want to ask? And that by working with the SSbD framework in a research and innovation landscape, we dare bringing the questions on the table, and we dare focusing on the problems we have and which we need to solve all together. Before, I just want to see, Alexander, are you ready to take the floor as the third speaker? Good. Then while you come here, and I will give you my microphone, just one small comment from my side, because Lya talked about socioeconomics. And when you read the GRC report, there is a fifth step in the framework, but which still needs a lot of development. It's a socioeconomic assessment. In the template, there is an opportunity to provide feedback on this step also, because we do want to collect your ideas and inputs on it. We do not talk about it for the moment because we didn't feel it was completely ripe. And we think also that in the other 4 steps, we have a lot of technical challenges already, which we need to solve. But just to make it's not forgotten, it is mentioned, but well, we want to hear feedback from you now on how we tackle that step so that when we revise the framework in 2 years' time, we can make it more visible.